While I was studying abroad in France, I found that I had more free time than I had expected. The campus internet wasn't exactly fantastic, and it was metered to prevent overusage. That meant I couldn't use Steam to download new games, and since I hadn't considered bringing very many with me, I was at the mercy of whatever I could find locally. Of course, being a huge nerd, I used this free time as an excuse to explore the local Saturn store. Basically a big electronics store, not the sort of place you probably think of when you think of France. Yes, I know. I'm studying abroad in a beautiful foreign country, and here I am, scrounging for a reason to spend more time sitting in front of a computer screen. I am painfully aware of this. You can imagine my surprise when I found a copy of Fallout 2 in a bin full of classic games. For all intents and purposes, it appeared to be an English copy too. I bought it and headed back to campus. Cue a relatively significant period of time where I would build a new character, get them to level 5 or 6, change my mind, and start over. I know I'm not the only one who does this. After 8 or 9 times, I finally settled on Dashing Dongwood, a roguish character inspired by Fallout 3's Herbert Dashwood. The story really begins at the den. If you're playing like an abnormal human being and not trying to break Fallout as hard as you can, you will probably reach the den about an hour and a half to 2 hours into the game, depending on how long you spend in Klamath. In that 2 hours, nothing remarkable happened. I slowly punched Dance to death, I ran around and stole everybody's shit, I preemptively took Vic's radio from his shack so that I could free him without having to run back and forth between the towns. The usual. Then I encountered an interesting character while heading to the Metzger Slaver building.
Hey, you! Come over here!
To the casual gamer, this is just generic NPC number 3. The game uses like the same 4 or 5 NPC sprites over and over again, but to die-hard Fallout players, generic NPC number 3 is the sprite Fallout's Ian used. Ian is one of the first characters you can recruit in the original Fallout, and he was infamous for spraying his 10mm SMG indiscriminately, even if we were between him and his target. I probably died to Ian's friendly fire more than I have to enemies in Fallout. The thing is, 80 years have passed between Fallout 1 and 2. Ian should be dead of old age or friendly fire or something. Side note, according to the Vault Wiki, Ian was originally planned to be in Fallout 2. In a random encounter, you could speak to a character who claims he can be found in an area called the Abbey. However, the Abbey doesn't actually exist in the game. Alternatively, Ian will be approachable in Vault City, where he will mistake you for your character from the original Fallout. The reason this caught my attention is because the "Hey you, come over here" dialogue is not something you normally get while passing NPCs. As I approach generic NPC number 3, a dialogue window automatically opens up.
Where'd you get that jumpsuit from?
Why do you want to know?
I met somebody in Shady Sands who wore a jumpsuit just like that. He said it came from Vault 13 and was searching for something. A water chip, I think it was. But when he succeeded, his vault turned him away. Can you imagine that? Going to all that trouble just to get the cold shoulder by the same people who sent you out in the first place.
But that's impossible. The founder of our village died of old age decades ago.
The founder of your village? Well, I'll be damned. Did he ever mention anything about the Auger?
No. And you still haven't explained how the hell you're still alive.
Oh, never mind. I guess he gave up on the idea.
Look, I'm a royal's chosen one. The knowledge of the Vault Dweller could help me in saving my people. You must tell me.
Okay, take it easy there, friend. A long time ago I met your dad, or grandfather, or whoever the hell he is to you, out in a place called Shady Sands. The only reason I know he got kicked out of the vault was because one day, he came back and found me. He was in a daze, like he took a Brahmin kick to the skull. Eventually, he told that vault had excommunicated him. Said they were afraid of what he had become. Then he starts talking about a place he found out east, past a city of ghouls. At first, I thought he was talking about Necropolis, a shithole I wanted nothing to do with. They shoot people like you and me on sight. Long story short, he was describing a place called Gecko. Much friendlier ghouls there, as far as ghouls are concerned at least. He says this place makes your hair stand on end, like there's something in the air. Naturally, he checks the place out, but he couldn't find a way in.
So what happened?
The next day, he's gone. Your grandfather would do that a lot, you see. Even when I knew him, I figured he'd gotten restless. A person like that, they never seem to stay in one place for long. But I started thinking about what he had told me. Something about it didn't sit right with me. So I decided to find out for myself.
Did you find the place?
Why do you think I'm still alive?
Hell if I know. Ian's dialogue ends with, "Why do you think I'm alive still?" regardless of the response he chose in the last picture. You cannot initiate a conversation with him once the window is closed. What I get from all this is your character in Fallout, the Vault Dweller, gets kicked out of the vault at the end of the game. He wanders north until he finds Gecko and Auger. Unable to find a way into Auger, he backtracks aimlessly until he finds himself at Shady Sands where Ian is. It occurred to me that not a whole lot about the story made sense. Why would they have the Vault Dweller heading so far north, only to turn right back around and find a character, Ian, that, let's be honest here, didn't have a whole lot to do with anything? And then have the Vault Dweller turn around yet again and end up in Arroyo. Ian could have been familiar with Gecko because of his history as a Crimson Caravan guard, but why was he placed in the den? And why are there in-game characters mentioning him being at the Abbey, which isn't even in the game, but is close to Gecko and potentially Auger? The thing about old RPGs is this: they hate your guts. There are no magic compass markers, no hand-holding, journals, or handouts. You usually have to figure things out on your own. When internet searches turned up nothing, I felt like I was back in the old RPG days, where bad hints were spread by word of mouth, and everybody's uncle worked for somebody who said something. So I took Ian's bizarre story as a challenge. The only tangible clue I had to work with was Gecko, so after picking up Vic in the den, I made my way east. In the game, Gecko is a town built around a large malfunctioning power plant. The residents, ghouls, live at odds with their neighbors in Vault City because the power plant leaks radiation into the water supply, which the citizens of Vault City don't particularly care for. Both towns might try to recruit you to achieve their ends. In the case of Vault City, it's by being a dick and sabotaging the power plant. Nothing in Gecko stood out as unusual, though. The conversation went exactly as expected, and my backup plan, repeatedly clicking on random NPCs, only elicited the usual generic responses. And then I remembered that the developers had planned to put Ian in Vault City. When I got there, Ian was nowhere to be found. I recruited Cassin, and the three of us began grilling the locals for any information by clicking on anything that moved. I abused the Pip-Boy's rest command so I could check areas in the daytime and at night. I took up the small quests outside of Vault City, hoping that it would trigger Ian's appearance. I even aimlessly circled around Gecko in Vault City, hoping to stumble across Auger on the automap. But nothing. Eventually I gave up and took the quest from Vault City to resolve the Gecko problem. Unlike Fallout 3 and New Vegas, your party members in Fallout 1 and 2 can supplement skills you're lacking in, like medicine or repair. Vic, for as fat and slow as he is a fantastic mechanic. This came in especially useful when I chose to ignore Vault City's advice, sabotage the power plant and massacre the locals, and repair the power plant. Vault City didn't appreciate this solution, and after a few choice words with their leadership, I effectively became a persona non grata. Returning the Gecko to bask in the local praise, I was greeted with a very unusual warning from one of the NPCs. It's difficult to read, but the goal is saying,
"A little advice. Don't go east of here."
Of course, to me, that reads, "Go east of here. There's something really fucking amazing east of here." I exited Gecko to find that the auto map had been updated. In Fallout 1 and 2, large cities were generally represented by a circle by one grid in size. Random encounters in smaller locations were represented by a much smaller circle. My auto map showed that Auger, so far east on the map that part of its name was cut off, and was most likely not a giant city. Setting my destination to Auger, I found that it was constantly interrupted by a bizarre random encounter.
"We know what you are looking for. Leave here. Spirits dwell in the lands to the east. You will find nothing but death."
I'm not going anywhere.
"You have been warned. We have sworn an oath to protect these sacred grounds from being disturbed."
You're gonna have to break that oath then. It took me a moment to realize that my party members, Vic and Cassidy, were already dead when the random encounter loaded. I reloaded my save and attempted to travel to Auger several more times, but ended up with the same results. Even when telling my companions to wait in Gecko, the random encounter would show them dead upon loading. This makes me think that anybody flagged as having been recruited, regardless of whether or not they're physically with you, are killed upon entering this random encounter. Side note, I wished I had recruited mine ahead of time. A very unusual character initiates dialogue with you the moment the world space loads, warning you to go back and basically cut your losses. If you say, "Fine, I'm leaving," you are able to loot your party members' corpses and flee from the location. However, if you try to travel to Auger, your trip is interrupted by the same random encounter. If you choose either one of the two remaining options, you initiate combat with the hooded figure and its tribal entourage. The tribals are typical enemies. They attack with spears and throwing knives and have a modest amount of HP. The hooded figure, on the other hand, has about as much HP as a Deathclaw. i.e., a lot more than you. And he can make short work of you in hand-to-hand combat. Every time I would get the figure's health down to almost dead, it would use some sort of aid item that instantly regenerated its health. The trick I discovered is to game the targeting system a bit. In other words, your best chance of success is to target the figure's groin over and over again until they're incapacitated. When they're on the ground, they can't move, attack, or use items. Then it's a matter of beating on them until they're thoroughly dead. When combat was over, I searched the corpses in hopes of finding something interesting, but besides a lot of spears, throwing knives, and healing powder, there was nothing worth carrying. Assuming the path had been cleared, I continued to Auger. Auger was a lot smaller than I thought it would be. That being said, I'm not really sure what I expected it to be. A giant radioactive hole, a la The Glow, some sort of Stonehenge, a big goddamn head, who knew? As you can see, it looks like a large crashed machine of some sort, with what looked like solar panels. There's a hatch off to the left, but nothing would make it open. The description for it was simply, a large wreck. After several attempts to open the hatch, the prompt had told me I felt very strange. Usually a similar message would pop up after spending too much time in a radioactive area, but my pit point indicated that I wasn't taking radiation damage. However, I discovered I picked up a new quest at some point along the way. For whatever reason, I was supposed to return to Hakkinen, a royal shaman. Hakkinen is a strange character who speaks in roundabout ways. Also, he talks to you in your dreams and tells you to hurry up if you're taking too long with the main quest. So, there's that. Taking my Pip-Boy's advice, I returned to Arroyo. Along the way, my trip is periodically interrupted by the corpses of my dead party members. By that, I mean I pop up in a random world space, like any random encounter, with Vic and Cassidy's dead bodies next to me. That's not strange or anything. When I finally get to Arroyo, nobody's at the bridge to greet me. Pushing further into the village, I find...
Chosen One! You return! Thank the gods! But I feared you are too late!
Holy shit! This place is a massacre! Who could have done this?
They came at night while we were sleeping. I do not know what they were, but they attacked mercilessly. Our warriors, our women, our children, our cattle, everything fell to them. Everyone is dead, Chosen One.
Did you see them? What did they look like?
You have done something. I feel it. You have brought this curse upon us, haven't you? It is already too late.
I don't know what I've done, but I'm not about to give up. Everybody in Arroyo is dead. And it's not because of the Enclave. The sole survivor, Lucas, gives me a pretty vague explanation before suddenly telling me that I might be to blame for what happened. At this point, the Auger and Arroyo main quests are failed, but nothing ends my game. I start doing what anybody would do in this situation. I decide to go to other locations and cause some trouble. I figure that maybe I'll even find out what the hell I did by traveling to Auger. In Reading, things were different, to say the least. Note, the description upon entering the town. The air here stinks of blood and death. The sun is nowhere to be seen. Where the mole rat mambo typically was, basically cockfighting featuring mole rats, there was a bunch of corpses and poles. The locals stood around, shouting as if there was a fight going on. I couldn't initiate dialogue with any of the named characters either. There were no more NPCs in the Den, Klamath, or Modoc. The locations have become quite literally ghost towns. Things are genuinely normal in New Reno. However, when I got near the Desperado Casino, I realized something had gone terribly wrong. As you could see, there's a large statue glitched in the middle of the street, and an interesting decor pattern on the outside of the casino. Even stranger, the description for the glitched statue is simply Frank Horrigan. Trying to talk to Louis Salvatore yields this response.
Why the alert? What's happening? Why the alert? What's happening? Why the alert? What's happening? Why the alert? What's happening?
I'll just be going now. While most generic NPC dialogue had become some iteration of blood, more blood, the few remaining named characters that you can initiate conversations with usually see some variation of the looping dialogue in this screenshot. Of note is that Louis Salvatore's specific dialogue seems to come from the Navarro generic Enclave soldier shouts. The same thing happens when speaking to Big Jesus Mordino. Little Jesus Mordino's sprite has been replaced with a ghoul. Clicking on him causes him to shout,
Hey, I recognize that tattoo.
Yeah, I imagine this means that many of the quests have become broken, to say the least. The game has also become relatively unstable. For example, trying to travel to San Francisco, Navarro, or Broken Hills will crash the game. This might have something to do with the corpses of my party members, which not only follow me around everywhere I go, but are duplicating and talking, although all they say is, hey you, come over here. Note that this screenshot was captured at around 1 PM, but it appears to be at night. The day-night cycle seems to also be broken, since whenever I load a map it's always night now. Most of the saves I've made after reaching Auger are no longer loading. Out of curiosity, I've gotten in touch with members of several forums that believe the copy of Fallout 2 I purchased is different than the ordinary UK final version, 1.02e, that is basically analogous to the additional content. Game of the Year edition, basically. Apparently there is rumor that a second older version, 1.02c, was being worked on and would encompass several cut areas from the original game, including the Abbey and EPA. Similar to what can be found in the community-built Restoration patch. While Interplay put its main focus into working on Van Buren, a small crew was assigned to working on Fallout 2's extended Game of the Year edition, possibly in a last-ditch effort to generate revenue when Interplay realized it was in financial trouble. The direction this team took with its in-house restoration project were strange. Obvious efforts were made to recapture some of Fallout 1's darker setting. By this point, one of the most common complaints was Fallout 2's over-the-top satire and wackiness. For whatever reason, most likely Interplay's acquisition by Titus Interactive in 2002, this version update was supposed to have been scrapped. However, an initial batch of version 1.02c copies were believed to have been published after an embarrassing mix-up at Titus's Paris, France headquarters. While these copies should have been removed before ever making it to market, accidents can happen. The copy I purchased was indeed version 1.02c. But in typical scary story fashion, the CD was misplaced by a roommate, and I was unable to find it before having to come back to the United States. So, that was Fallout 2 Auger Quest. What y'all think? Pretty interesting story, to say the least. Of course, an interesting, very obscure story for my first ever Creepypasta reading. How do you think of my performance? Is it, a little too mundane, a little too monotone? Did I not put enough emotion? Do I sound too casual? Overall, this story kind of required me to be casual about it. It's a video game creepypasta. And as far as video game creepypastas go, I think this is okay. I think it's alright. And the reason why I picked it, because of its very, very interesting concepts. It gives me a lot of, Godzilla NES creepypasta vibes to an extent. Although that NES creepypasta vibe, you know, Godzilla NES kind of goes into a very fantastical kind of fantasy path that has its own thing that kind of makes it good. This one's definitely a lot more grounded, but it has similar vibes to it, similar themes. Basically what I'm trying to say, it's a lot better because, not only because it's more grounded, obviously, but its story actually has to do with the game itself. It's not just Sonic.exe, man. It's not just, you know, ooh, you know, if it was like that, it like, ooh, I found this creepy version of Fallout 2 and Frank Horrigan is Satan and he comes out of the scream and kills me. Where, you know, it's just a story, even if it's not supernatural, it's just kind of a bunch of spooky stuff happens and nothing really has to do with anything in the game. It's like, it feels very it doesn't feel disconnected like a lot of other video game creepypasta do. Basically, the story doesn't feel meaningless, you know? It has, like, a purpose. There is some depth to it, like I've been saying. Sonic.exe feels meaningless. It feels pointless. That is my point. This one feels like it has a point. Though, despite saying all that, I am kind of going to contradict myself here. It kind of loses the point with its ending. Its ending is abysmal, to say the least. That's sugarcoating it. In my opinion, the ending is hot garbage. That goes into the bin of the criticisms of this story, which I will get to. I will still want to add a few things that I do still like about this story. One, I like the screenshots. I love visualizations in creepypastas and stories in general. You know, I can't read a novel unless it's got pictures, obviously. So that's a plus. Some of it looks fake, and one screenshot in particular, in the recording and making of this video, I just kind of found out recently, which I am going to get to with my criticisms. But other than that, the screenshots are pretty good. I like the screenshots. And two, the groundedness, like I said, and its realism for the most part, and its presentation, while also keeping me intrigued with the idea of this secret little quest in the game, which can include and add in, you know, new dialogue and stuff, and really actually playing the game, where it's just a bunch of creepy crap happens, you know, the game breaks down, or, you know, it's just stuff that just, I'm not saying that it doesn't make sense. Like I said, there are good creepypasta, I feel like, video game creepypasta that can pull that off, you know, with the supernatural element and break the game, but it's hard to do. In this case, however, it keeps to its roots. You know, it sticks to its beats, and it feels coherent. You know, he is playing the game. The story is about the game. It isn't about, like, the ghost or the anomaly. It's about the anomaly in the game. But that's where the positives kind of end there. There's quite a few things I don't like about this. There's a few inconsistencies. However, I don't know if I even want to call them inconsistencies, as more like I should call them vague clues. Little things you notice that could mean something more than just an oversight or what. So, when he discovers that he gets the Auger Quest in his Pip-Boy, you can look at the calendar. It literally says June 28th, 2162. That's not right. What the? 2162. It's supposed to be 2241. What happened there? Either it's an oversight or it's a clue. It's gotta mean something, because 2162 is the same time frame as Fallout 1, when the Vault Dweller has his journey. So that has to mean something. Because, yeah, that's blatantly wrong, and obviously timey-wimey hijinks happened, which gets me to my third little inconsistency. Is in the when he gets to New Reno and he gets to the Desperado Casino, when he sees that rock formation, that rock statue, one, that's just not any statue. That is the Guardian of Forever. It's a special encounter in the game. If you come across a random encounter, it's actually a time gate that leads into the past, and you go to the vault. You go to Vault 13 in the past, and you can break the water chip. That means a whole bunch of paradoxical nonsense, but you get the gist. It is a special encounter. It's also a Star Trek reference, so I know my shit. Fun fact. Other than that, my beef with it is, why didn't he say anything? Why didn't the author he just says, and I quote, in quotes, As you can see, there is a large statue glitched into the middle of the street and an interesting decor pad on the outside of the casino. Even stranger, the description for the glitch statue is simply Frank Horrigan. He says that with a straight face while also holding the solar scorcher in his inventory. What? I don't know. That just kind of peeves me. Just like, that's where you get the solar scorcher. You enter the time gate, and in that little encounter, you can get the solar scorcher, which is an energy weapon that you can get. He didn't mention that. Another thing too is the encounter works. It had to have worked for him to do that. That just kind of like, maybe it's a pet peeve, another pet peeve, but it's something worth mentioning. Maybe it's a clue. All of this stuff, mostly the last two I just mentioned, I think it comes down to like maybe if they were to serve as like a meaning something more to explain what's happening. He didn't obviously want to just give it away or anything like that or mention it. He wanted like the readers to figure it out. But my issue with that is it makes your author, your writing, your character look like a dumbass or like oblivious. You know, it just kind of peeves me. It just makes me mad. It's like, why aren't you noticing this shit? I don't know. Right? You know, he made it sound like that he's an expert in the game, the character. Like, I play Fallout 2 millions of times. I get to level 5 and 6 every day of the week, and I just start over because I can. Now, to the last thing I hate about this story, right? The ending. The ending is a half-assed, half-baked, cockamamie bullshit ending of just, like, utter laziness. I don't really want to bash it too hard. I really don't. To be honest, it just seems like he just wanted the story to end off of like a mysterious note. And like, it's for you to figure out, like it's some SCP entry, you know, where they don't explain shit, right? But it just seems lazy and utterly disappointing. I wanted more. This story has a lot of potential and it just ends. It's just, sorry guys, I had to go back. I was done studying and I forgot the game. Whoopsie doodles, my mistake. Sorry guys, couldn't play it. Bye. You know, what? I don't like that. I don't like that one bit. I think it's pretty bad, pretty lazy, not great. Now, before I give my final kind of like rating of the story, one last thing to mention, and this is more or less relating to what I kind of, from what this story has given me, or barely given me, in terms of clues and stuff, and how I'm trying to interpret this. The main question is, what is the Auger, right? Basically, what is the Auger? What is the point of this quest, right? I can only really answer the first one, though, I more or less. Like, the Auger, from the looks of it, you observe it, right? It looks like some sort of satellite. It looks like some sort of crashed satellite of some sorts. Auger itself as a word means like a drill, right? But personally for me, I think it more or less means the other spelling of auger, the other meaning, which goes A-U-G-U-R as opposed to A-U-G-E-R. And it basically means, it's a verb that basically means to foretell an event that causes, it's like a cause and effect thing that foretells to an outcome or several different outcomes, right? Or one of two outcomes or something like that, right? Such as 9/11 augured stricter flight security type of stuff, you know? In this case, that when the chosen one, the main character, goes to the Auger, the Auger basically curses him with a bad ending, with a bad outcome, because of him going there and disturbing its privacy, basically, you know, pissing it off, I guess, I don't know. It cursed him with this effed up world, with this cracked, destroyed reality, or whatever. Obviously, it was glitched and unfinished, so I'm pretty sure that's not how it was supposed to go, but it was bad. Or you know, all of Royo is dead, who I kind of suspected it was the tribals that did that. It could also maybe bless someone, like with Ian, and then gave him immortality, or an extended lifespan. Which, speaking of Ian quickly, canonically he's supposed to be dead in the games. And it's not like the author didn't know that. He seems to kind of allude that that's what happens, because he mentions Necropolis, and that's where Ian dies, canonically. Sorry, spoilers. But, and that information is in the Fallout 2 manual with the Vault Dwellers memoirs, so it's not like the developers of this unfinished version wouldn't have known that either, right? That was in the game, so they're making some sort of alternate universe. I don't know. But that is another thing to point out, maybe another inconsistency, I guess. You know, the fact that the author, the main character, the speaker, didn't know that either, about not mentioning that Ian should be dead. I guess he doesn't know his Fallout lore. But that's more or less how I am, on a basic level, interpreting what the Auger is. In reality, though, in the middle of making this video, I literally just looked at the comments of this story on the original site that it was posted on, and one comment literally says, "This was actually a pretty cool story. I wish you would continue it. It almost seemed real until I saw the Auger, and two things popped to my head. One, it's a higher resolution from anything around it. Two, that's a random encounter from Fallout Tactics." And so, he ripped this screenshot literally straight out of Fallout Tactics. The Auger is, at least visually, is taken from a special encounter from the game. Specifically, it is actually a crashed space station satellite platform called Mir, which is actually based off the real satellite platform that exists in real life called Mir, which is a Soviet-Russian space station that used to exist. Yeah. That's exactly what it is. It very much is a space station. It is crashed. They crashed from space. That's what the Auger is, more or less. And I was like, my mind was blown. I've been making this video for a little while now, mostly because I needed footage to play the game, but I was researching and constantly reading the story off and on. And I literally just discovered this recently, within the last like couple days, and I'm like, what the fuck? I was like, what? It not necessarily ruined it for me, but like, it like just completely changed my whole perspective on this story now. I can kind of clearly see that he probably also photoshopped the entirety of the Fallout 2 HUD into it and put the Chosen One in. Although I don't know anything about Fallout Tactics. I've never even seen gameplay of it. So in general though, there's another Reddit post that says something about it, but Auger could also be a reference to the Citadel Star Station, which is a Wasteland reference. If you don't know Wasteland, it is the predecessor to the Fallout series in general, to Fallout 1. It was the game that was worked on, I think, by Interplay. Correct me if I'm wrong. The Citadel Star Station was also a satellite platform space station that caused World War III and caused the game's events, you know. So it could also be a reference to that. It could also maybe mean something towards its story. But that's it. That's all I really got to say for this story. 6 out of 10. I would have given it a 5 out of 10 if it didn't have any screenshots, but 6 out of 10. Overall, it had potential. It really did. The way it ended just kind of just ruined it for me. I probably would have given it I don't know, not only say I give it a better score, but I just really wish he did it a little better. I wish he spent more time going through the game, trying to beat it, discovering it. This could have been a much longer story, maybe on the same level as like Godzilla NES, or even like Ben Drowned or something like that, right? You know, maybe without the supernatural elements, but with the same depthness and, you know, storytelling potential for there to be. You know, even just investigating this unfinished version, an alternate storyline to the original Fallout 2. That would have been really cool. But I'm still fine. Like, at least we still got this, right? More or less. Like, it's still an interesting concept. I still enjoyed reading it for the most part. And I just wish that more was done with it. Even though I would say I'm probably more harsher than I was with being it positive, I do still gotta kind of have to cut it some slack. It came out back in 2011, which was like the peak, the height of the popularity of creepypastas of the time. It, like, really, in retrospect, it was definitely probably considerably better than a lot of its peers. For the time, this is actually an alright story, an alright creepypasta. It isn't complete slop. It isn't a shit pasta. So, if I suppose I'll cut some slack, but I'm not gonna, you know, completely forgive it or give it a higher score because of that. My criticisms still stand, and that's all I gotta say about that. Happy Halloween. Peace out. I'm going. Bye. I'm gonna go eat some candy or more creepypasta readings in the future. I don't know. I'm out of here.